Hi everyone, my name is Raven Bussey, and today be presenting my multimodal project titled Reclaiming the Self, Identity Reconstruction in Toni Morrison's Beloved and Alice Walker's The Color Purple. Both works center Black women who have survived unimaginable trauma, yet, rather than being defined by that trauma, each woman undertakes a slow, painful, and powerful process of reconstructing her identity. My goal today is to explore how Celie and Seth reclaim themselves emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and communally using womanist theory as the interpretive framework. So, the introduction. So, both Beloved and The Color Purple present protagonists whose identities have been violently shaped by others. Celia is sexually abused, separated from her children, and constantly told she is ugly and worthless. Her sense of identity starts at almost zero. Seth, on the other hand, is molded by slavery, where she was legally considered property. The violence she endures permanently fractures who she believes she is. So, the central question guiding this project is how does a person reconstruct their sense of self after it has been stripped away? This question not only shapes the characters' arcs, but also resonates through Black feminist thought and womanist theory. To understand identity reconstruction in these novels, I ground my analysis in womanist theory. Alice Walker defines a womanist as someone deeply committed to the survival and wholeness of an entire community, both male and female. This framework is broader than mainstream feminism because it directly centers Black women's lived experiences, their cultural traditions, and the healing power of community. Bell Hooks adds that reclaiming identity for Black women often requires what she calls talking back, meaning resisting the narratives forced onto them and reclaiming their own voice. So, through a womanist lens, Celie and Seth are not just characters surviving trauma. They are women actively reconstructing themselves in opposition to the systems that have tried to erase them. So when we meet Celie, she has almost no sense of personal identity. She writes letters to God instead of to another person because she literally has no one who listens to her. Her very first words are, I am here, which is heartbreaking because it's a declaration born out of invisibility. Patricia Hill Collins writes about controlling images, stereotypes placed on Black women that distort how they see themselves. Celie internalizes these. She believes she's ugly, believes she deserves abuse, and believes she is insignificant. What's powerful is that Celie's story shows how identity can start from complete fragmentation, but it doesn't end there. Seth's identity is shaped not only by slavery, but also by the haunting presence of her dead daughter, Beloved. And Beloved, trauma is not metaphorical, it literally walks the earth. Seth is frozen between her past as a dehumanized, enslaved woman and her desire to create a future for herself and her living children. Morrison describes Seth's mind as loaded with the past, capturing how trauma prevents forward movement. So while Celie begins from a place of emotional void, Seth starts from emotional overload. She's consumed by memory. In both stories, relationships serve as the catalyst for identity reconstruction. For Celie, Shook Avery functions as a mirror, someone who sees beauty and worth in her long before she sees it in herself. Shook teaches her that her voice matters, her pleasure matters, and that her creativity matters. For Seth, the turning point comes through the presence of Paul D and her daughter Denver. Paul D helps her confront suppressed memories while Denver grows into a young woman who helps Seth rejoin the world. Bell Hooks says healing often occurs through connection. And we see that clearly here, identity reconstruction is not a solitary process. So, reclaiming identity requires reclaiming voice. We see this in Celie transforming through her writing. Her letters slowly shift from prayers to self expression. Her declaration, I'm poor, I'm black, I may be ugly, but I'm here. This marks the moment where she names herself instead of letting others define her. Seth also undergoes a vocal reclamation. She begins telling her story to Paul D, something she has never done. Speaking her past out loud becomes an act of liberation, a way of taking control of her narrative rather than allowing trauma to silence her. In Womanist thought, voice is power. Both women find that power. So, a major aspect of their identity reconstruction involves reclaiming their bodies. Celie discovers bodily autonomy, pleasure, and desire through her relationship with Shug. This is radical for someone who has thought that her body existed only for men's use. For Seth, bodily reclamation is more complex. Her body has been branded, violated, and used as labor. The story forces her to confront that her body belongs to her, not to the plantation, not to her past, and certainly not to the ghost that haunts her. In womanist theory, the body, the spirit, and the mind are inseparable. When these women reclaim their bodies, they reclaim themselves. Another key theme is the role of community in rebuilding identity. Celie eventually builds a chosen family and even becomes financially independent through her sewing business. This community helps her see herself as capable and valuable. Seth's story highlights community even more strongly. At her lowest point, the community or the neighborhood women gathered to physically and spiritually intervene, saving her from beloved. In both stories, identity is not rebuilt alone. Womanism emphasizes that liberation is indeed collective. By each story's end, both women reach a state of wholeness through their journeys, though their journeys look different. Celie ends with joy, financial independence, and a restored relationship with her children. Her transformation is linear and affirming. Seth's ending is more ambiguous. She's free from beloved but still healing. Yet the important shift is that she begins to believe she deserves a future. Both characters move from trauma defined identities to self defined ones. Comparing their stories reveals two different models of identity reconstruction. Celie's is upward and empowering. Once she finds love, community, and creativity, her growth accelerates. Seth's is more uh, it's more cyclical. Trauma repeatedly pulls her back until she confronts it directly. Despite these differences, both narratives emphasize that Black women possess the power to redefine themselves in ways that resist oppressive systems. So, from a womanist perspective, identity reconstruction is not just personal, it is political. Collins highlights the need to resist controlling images, and both Seth and Celie do exactly that. Bell Hooks describes self recovery as revolutionary, and both protagonists engage in this revolutionary act by choosing joy, connection, and self definition over silence and suffering. Their stories challenge readers to understand Black women's identity formation as an act of resistance. In conclusion, Beloved and The Color Purple present two powerful narratives of identity reconstruction. Through relationships, voice, bodily autonomy, and community support, Celie and Seth reclaim themselves piece by piece. Using a womanist lens highlights how their personal healing connects to broader movements for Black women's wholeness and liberation. Thank you for listening.